How to simplify complex fractions again. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to simplify the numerator, the top of the fraction, by either adding or subtracting. And once we do that, we're going to look and see, do we have anything that factors? We'll do the same thing to the denominator, the bottom of the big fraction. We simplify the denominator by adding or subtracting, and then we're going to look, does anything need to be factored? Thirdly, go old school. Write the fraction with the division symbol. And I know you can't see it very well here. I think it shows up a little bit better on the paper. And then we're going to divide. When dividing, don't ask why. Flip the second one and multiply. Again, look and see, does anything need to be factored? And then finally, we'll simplify. Do we have anything exactly the same on the top and the bottom? So we'll take a couple minutes here, and what I recommend on your paper is start really left. I was able to get them all in, but you may or may not be able to fit 3 of them in there. But we're going to simplify the top of the fraction by adding or subtracting. In this case, subtract. So it's 2 over x minus 4 over x squared. And I don't know why I wrote the problem down again, especially when I don't have a lot of space, but what's the common denominator between x and x squared? X squared. Ask yourself, will x go into x squared evenly? And it will. So our common denominator is x squared. And I'm going to write that a little bit neater, but the thing now is, we didn't do anything to this right fraction. We only did something to the left fraction. And what we did is, originally it was x, and now it's x squared. So all that we did is we put in another x. And in fact, maybe I shouldn't have written it as x squared in the bottom. Maybe I should have written it as x times x. Because there's that fancy form of 1. Don't cancel out the x's. But 2x, and then x times x, simplifies to be 2 over x. But we need to have that common denominator. So now, having shown that, this is 2x over x squared minus 4 over x squared. We have a common denominator. And we can simplify a little bit more. This becomes 2x minus 4 over x squared. And then the question is, can we factor anything? And it's not much, but there is a GCF of 2. When we factor it out, so we have 2 times the quantity of x minus 2 over x squared. Well, we simplified the top of the fraction. We're going to do the same thing to the bottom. 1 minus 2 over x. And remember that 1 is the same thing as 1 over 1. What's the common denominator between 1 and x? X. Once again, it just so happens that that value there remains the same. And then what did we put into the denominator? We put into the denominator an x. So what we put into the numerator is also an x. X over x, a fancy form of 1. And the only thing now here that we have, when we simplify this, is that it's x minus 2 divided by x. We've done step 1. We've done step 2. Our third step then is divide. Go old school, use that division symbol. So we're going to divide by x minus 2 over x. Which leads us to step 4, which is when dividing, don't ask why, flip the second one in, multiply. So the blue fraction isn't going to change. but our green. Now we're going to multiply. And the x is going to go in the numerator, and the x minus 2 is going to go in the denominator. Do we have anything exactly the same in the top and in the bottom? Oh, we've got an x minus 2. And some of you might see that there's a little bit more. But just to make sure that I'm showing all of my work, this is going to be 2x over x squared. But instead of x squared, I'm going to write it like this. And I know that's not always the favorite, but if you write x squared out longhand, do we have anything exactly the same on the top and the bottom? We've got an x, and that's going to leave us with our simplified version of our complex fraction. So as we look at problem number 2, the process is the same. Let's look at the very top of this. Find our common denominator. Look at the very bottom. Find the common denominator. Divide. Simplify. So our top here, x over 4 minus 1 over x. What's the common denominator between 4 and x? 4x. So this time, we need to ask ourselves, what's in the denominator now that wasn't in there before? Well, what's in the denominator now that wasn't in there before is an x. For a fraction to the right, what's in the denominator now that wasn't in there before is a 4. If we simplify a little bit more, we have x squared minus 4. Pull it up so you can see. X squared minus 4 over 4x. Can we factor anything? It's going to be x minus 2 and x plus 2 divided by 4x. Don't cancel anything from there. There's nothing exactly the same on the top and the bottom. We've simplified the numerator. So we need to simplify the denominator. The 1 over 2x plus 1 over 4. And just like the previous problem, it seems that people are having an issue here because you want to say that the common denominator is 8x. And 8x will work, but somewhere along the line, then later on, people get confused with it. So ask yourself once again, will 2 go into 4 evenly? And hopefully you're nodding your heads yes, because 2 will go into 4 evenly, and the common denominator on this is also 4x. Then we go back and we ask ourselves, what's in the denominator that wasn't in there before? Well, 2 times 2 is 4. And it shows up better on the other one, but what's in the denominator that wasn't in there before? This time there's an x. Don't cancel anything out. When we simplify, 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 times x is x, divided by 4x. And we've taken care of steps 1 and 2, and now we get to step 3. We need to write it so we can divide. So I didn't do very well on my space, but if I scoot this down a little bit, I can. We're going to divide by what we just found here, 2 plus x and the 4x. When dividing, don't ask why. Flip the second one and multiply. So the red, I'm not going to change. x minus 2 times x plus 2 divided by 4x. And we're going to multiply by 4x over 2 plus x. So we're to the simplify part. Do we have anything exactly the same on the top and on the bottom? Got 4x. Do we have anything else? Ready? 2 plus x. 2 is positive, x is positive. X plus 2. X is positive, 2 is positive. These are both. These are also the same values. They're written in a different order, which is allowed. They are the same value. So finally, what we have left is only the x minus 2. I accidentally forgot to turn the recorder back on for problem number 1, but here's an example of still solving an equation on number 2. When we look at this, the one thing that I may do differently from the original is, do we have anything in this problem that can be factored? And if we look to the right of our equation, we see that x squared plus x minus 6, that seems that it can be factored. So let's factor x squared plus x minus 6. And it's going to require us to split the middle. 1 times 6 is 6, and the factors of 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Well, either of those combine to be 1, the 2 and 3. And in fact, it's going to be minus 2 plus 3. But again, we're splitting the middle. So we have minus 2x plus 3x, and we group. And what we see in our first group is that our greatest common factor is an x. And we're left with x minus 2. Over here, greatest common factor is 3, and we're left with x minus 2. And at some point in time, it's going to be good to factor that, whether you end up doing it first or you end up doing it later. But now that we've got that, our problem here is 1 over x minus 2 plus 3 over x plus 3. And we need to find the common denominator. We factored the other side, but we need to find the common denominator. But the only thing we can do for a common denominator is we can multiply the x minus 2 times the x plus 3. That's it. So our common denominator, x minus 2 times x plus 3, x minus 2 times x plus 3. And then we need to ask ourselves, what did we put in to the denominator that wasn't there before? Well, we put in there an x plus 3. The other one, what did we put in there that wasn't in there before? Well, we've got an x plus 3 in there, so it looks like we put in there an x minus 2. This one got a plus in between, so you don't necessarily need that extra step. It's not an issue of missing a sign from a positive. It's the negative that causes us to miss the sign sometimes. We get x plus 3. When we distribute here, we've got 3x minus 6, and divide by x minus 2 times x plus 3. On the other side of the problem, we have 4. And remember, we factor. And we ended up with x minus 2 times x plus 3. And I almost skipped a step, because I forgot to combine like terms over there on the left side. So I'll go back and combine those like terms. We've got the 1x and the 3x. We've got the 3 and the negative 6. So we end up with 4x minus 3, 3 minus 6, over x minus 2 times x plus 3. And on the other side, we still have the 4 and the x minus 2 times the x plus 3. And if you have been doing as much of the practice as you possibly can, what you have finally seen is once we have the common denominator, because we have one on here, you essentially can cross out the denominator at this point. Now I'm still going to show my work, which is we're going to cross multiply here. And when we cross multiply, we have 4x minus 3 times x minus 2 times x plus 3. And on the other side of the equation, we have 4 times x minus 2 times x plus 3. But if we're really looking close, we've got an x minus 2 times an x plus 3 on the left side. We've got an x minus 2 times the x plus 3 on the right side. We can divide out that. And when we divide it out, all that we're left with is 4x minus 3 equals 4. And I need to show my work a little bit better here. The x minus 2's cancel out. The x plus 3's cancel out. The x minus 2's cancel out. The x plus 3's cancel out. And we can solve. So we can add 3 to both sides. We get 4x equals 7. Then we divide both sides by 4. And I know it's not pretty, but you can get a fraction answer. And we end up with x equals 7/4.